Thanks for coming to hang out with us today. Ruck Up Buttercup is a podcast hosted by Deployed Love. We chat about real things that military families deal with and help you to love the call to action. So you know the drill. Ruck Up Buttercup. Ruck Up Buttercup podcast can be found on all your favorite streaming locations. As well, we are now available on Reach Across America Radio on Fridays at 11 p.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find Reach Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. Just search the word Reach. Can't wait to see you there. Hey everybody, welcome back to the last episode of the year for our third season. So we are excited that you guys are here with us again and hope that your holidays went well and you have some fun plans for today on New Year's Eve. If you're listening as we've posted this, but we are here just going to talk about ways that you can connect with not only your military member when you're deployed, but with other family that you may be stationed far away from, and just fun ways to connect with people that you want to keep connections with.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest one, especially if you have a service member deployed, is just to send fun care packages. I know I've seen so many. I think it also depends on your service member, because I know if I had done this for Jeremy would have been like, please don't do this again. Where you can decorate the inside of the box and like theme them out and everything like that. Obviously, that means you have to kind of time like shipping and things like that. Also how much money you want to spend, because shipping those boxes is expensive. But it can also
some people go into really cool though. You were talking like
like really decorate them.
We just didn't really have like the internet to the extent that we do now when my husband had been deployed for those long enough times. So like
yeah. I mean, I do remember like when Jeremy was deployed back in the like late 2000s, his first couple of deployments. I do remember sending him things to like, decorate for Christmas. Like, hey, like what are some things that would like make time go by? He was like football, so I sent a couple footballs, and then I wrapped them up and I sent like homemade baked cookies for like everybody to share and things like that. And especially like the holiday Christmas time, I think that's like the easiest time to do those kind of things. Like, hey, like, how can I bring some Christmas cheer, holiday cheer to you? And I think I sent him like tinsel and like flat ornaments where they could like make a little tree on the wall. Like a zigzag tinsel tree type of thing. And things like that. But I feel like it also just depends on where you're at too. Because I remember being like, God, this costs so much money. Like, can't you just go over to the PX and just buy this beef jerky?
It depends on where they're at. Yeah, like you're saying, because sometimes they have so much access more than they need, honestly. But to things that's like, what do I even send you that you can't get already? And well, Dustin's last deployments have been 3 months. So like by the time with all the movement in between, like I couldn't even send boxes because I was like, I don't know if he'll even be there or if it'll get there in time for him to still be there. Like,
yeah, we during one of the rapid deployments the last couple of years, there was a time frame where they were there longer and they were expected to be there a lot longer than they were. So we did send packages, and then they ended up leaving before they even got delivered to them. So they ended up having to get returned. And I think we got the package I sent him. I think he had been home for like a month and a half by the time it got back to us. And I was like, thank goodness it was different things. Like he sent a package to me, not for me, by the way, people. Like it was more important just to send things back that he didn't have to carry.
Yeah, always the big boxes of things.
Yeah. And oh my God, it was just so funny. I was just like, he's like, hey, I'm sending this box back. It costs a lot of money, but don't worry about it. And I was like,
don't worry about it.
I was like, how much did it cost? He's like, it costs like $200 to ship. And I was like, Jesus, Jeremy.
That stuff in there better be worth more than $200.
It was worth a lot more. But I was just like, oh goodness. Like, let's not go down that route again.
Yeah, I just feel like, and it's definitely depends on the branch, because I think that Air Force has a lot more solid deployments when they go, and definitely Navy. Some of the ones that I've been seeing people in the military groups recently have been on these massive deployments and they just got extended for another 218 days. I was like, holy cow. I don't think the Army could get away with extending a deployment for almost an entire year on top of what they've already gone. I was like, how do they get away with allowing that?
I feel like and that makes me wonder, because like a lot. I feel deployment is thrown around for everything. So whether it's an actual deployment or if it's like a TDY type
Well,
of
this one,
duty.
at least the one that I saw, it was they were on the ship. They were deployed on a ship. So
Yeah. See, and I feel like that's kind of like what Army would consider like a unaccompanied tour for a year, because it's not necessary. I mean, sometimes they're just sitting in the middle of the ocean, like they're not in a combat. It's like for me, so for me
right.
personally, deployment is a combat zone. You are in a in an area where there is a likelihood of you seeing some gunfire.
But I think the thing is, we don't know a
So
lot
I
about
think
Navy, I guess, but I think Navy, they're in that it's considered a combat zone because it's within certain zones of where war is.
yeah.
So that obviously there's not a water fight right now, which would be
I just
terrible if it got to the point that there was, but like they're
So
there in
how
case
long
they
are
need to.
typically, like, I guess it's also like typically like how long are their original deployments? Because like 2 year, that would be
Yeah, I
like
would
two
assume the first one wasn't a full year, but
I was gonna say
218
that
days to add to a deployment is that's like 9 months. Like,
makes me that makes me wonder, was that added or did they volunteer to stay on longer? Because I know that happens in certain, I
right.
mean,
It definitely does.
Jeremy's 100% has done this, where he has said, "Oh, I've been told I have to do this," and then down the line, he's like, "Yeah, actually, I volunteered for it." And I'm just like, "Why didn't you just say that to begin with?"
It's
Like
just
instead of
wild to
me
me that
being
it's an
like,
option. Like, how are you going to have people in these poor boats for that amount of time and then be like, well, even if they're offering, like, hey, we need 20 of you to
"Yeah,
stay
but
for another year, like in a
but I mean,
boat.
like same thing for deployment though, like." Hazard pay, I mean, all that extra pay that's on top of it. Like some people, like me and Jeremy, not joked about it, but like during all these rapid deployments, specifically the one to Iraq, the very first one, the Jeremy's unit came back really quickly because they got pulled back quickly because they were supposed to go partake in this other exercise back in Jordan. But then COVID hit, but everyone else stayed in Kuwait for like 6 months. And we were just like, dang, we could have been just racking in all that like deployment money because you get paid more if you had just stayed, but now you're just stuck here with me in
Yeah.
COVID, where everyone else is getting deployment pay. And like, and that's a joke. And I love my husband. So anyone who's listening, I hate when he's away. But like, especially when it's on those rapid deployments where you don't have time to prep, but like, I'm a military spouse. So like, deployments come with my husband's MOS. Like, I
Yeah.
know it. Like, that's what he trains for every single day of the year.
And you
So,
don't realize like how used to that you get, which is sad to think that you get used to it. But like this last year, I'm like,
I
why
just
are
want
me
them
and
to
Dustin
actually,
at each other's fucking face all the time? We are
yeah,
arguing so much more. And I'm like, no, it's because he's just always here. He doesn't
he's
work
just
night shifts,
here.
which I hated night shifts when I was in it, but I'm like, but I did get this time where my kids were actually asleep and I could actually be alone because now
Yeah.
he, even when he works nights here, he gets off at 9. Kira's not in bed because if you have a preteen, you know they never go to sleep ever. So she's just always there. And then he gets home and I'm like, I never am alone. And by the time I wake up in the morning, everybody's awake. And I'm like, I I miss those times where I'm just alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm enjoying having Jeremy home to the extent of I was really thinking he was gonna like be home a lot more, and that was just kind of a very falsified like hood type of area that we were given that ROTC assignment was gonna give us. He's the only difference is he's home at 5:30 rather than 7:30, 8 o'clock now. But
Yeah,
he's
which
still
is
gone first
nice.
thing in the morning. It is nice. A lot of times he's like exhausted because he has to get up so early because he and his commute is now 45 minutes. But um, it is what it is. We're already half a year down. We only have a year and a half left of this assignment. It's gonna be something that it'll be fine. Now, if I had to do this like for 3 or 4 years, I might be a little upset about it. But um but I mean like he's gone on he'll be gone the whole month of January. So I'm kind of like, oh, okay. Like I can like,
Have some free
get
time.
into a good groove for the
Yeah.
beginning of the year and type of things without him here because it's just so hard. I mean, if you've listened to any of our past podcasts, I've discussed about how my entire family are picky eaters and it's just so hard to do all the different things to stay happy because you just like, I'm not making 3 different meals. So, but I guess like going back to like the holiday thing and, um, how you can make, or even like staying like together from afar, you know, we talked about packages, but the other thing is like what we're doing right now is Skyping. Like modern technology is so
I
different
say
from
the
what it
fact you
was.
just said Skype is like, oh, we definitely
Oh,
did deployments
Skype.
in the
Yeah.
early
Okay.
2000s.
Zoom, Facebook
Does
Messenger.
Skype
Yeah.
even
Okay.
exist? I don't even know if it still exists at this point.
I don't know if it, I mean, it may still exist, but like,
It's not the prime technology at this point. Yeah.
I remember using Skype, and it was so spotty too.
It was
So
the
it wasn't
worst.
always,
Yeah.
you couldn't always do it, but now like there's Facebook Messenger, I
I
mean,
mean,
heck, there's
everything. You can pretty
Snapchat. I
much
mean,
video call from your phone, like everything.
yeah, I mean, I think it depends obviously on your unit and things like that. But I mean, like even if you're just stationed far away from home, I mean, we were stationed in Alaska, um, for our second duty station, and we didn't get to come home every year, and so, um, you know, my in-laws came up to see us quite like. Actually, they only came up once, so they came up one Christmas. Um, but it was just so expensive to fly home. So like if you're stationed Oconus or literally just the other across the country, I mean, you know, we all know that the military doesn't make a lot of money. That's not an expense that a lot of us can afford unless we're saving up throughout the year. And then even then it's just kind of like, do we want to deal with the stress of traveling during a holiday and things like that? So
Especially if you live Oconus. Like, it's not a quick trip. It's a
it's
lot.
not. I mean, I remember, I mean, my family's on the East Coast, so North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, majority of my family. And so you know, from coming from Alaska, it was literally a 14 to 16 hour travel because, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, 2 stops minimum with layovers. And I was doing it with a 6-month-old, and I was just like, this is, I mean, carrying everything. It was exhausting. So Skyping, Facebooking, FaceTime, all of those are super great ways to connect, and you can still include it. And I know like we do this all the time. Like we've done like where we've been like, okay, we're gonna do like a paint party, like we're gonna craft together and talk and chat and drink
Yeah, I
wine
think
or
that's
coffee.
like we end up being like our family chats being very like just hey, we're gonna call grandma. But I want to maybe that's something that'd be really fun for the next year is to be like, hey, let's plan to read this book with grandma, and then we're gonna call her every week and we're gonna talk about the chapters we read. Like that would be something that I think my mom would really enjoy to like hey, we're gonna
Oh,
read
that's a good
Aragon or
idea.
something, and like here you will read the first 5 chapters this week, and we'll talk on the end of the week or something.
Yeah. So we FaceTime Jeremy's parents at least once a week. So usually it's Saturday or Sunday when Jeremy's home. But like his mom will call us and she'll talk to the kids and ask them about their week. And of course, like she follows like their school page and my obviously my page and sees things that I post or if I text or something. So she's kind of already like knows kind of what they've done throughout the week. So she's kind of like engaging them in conversation. And it's so nice because like even though I mean, currently right now they live 4 hours away, but even if when we lived in Texas, like, you know, she was still just so involved and intrigued and, you know, oh, you did this today, tell me more about it. Or, hey, like, you know, I saw this on your school page, tell me more about it.
Yeah, because
And
I feel like our parents and their grandparents, if you don't have kids, just your own parents, blame a lot of the like disconnect on us, but it's not fair to do that because you also still live a long ways away and need to do that like just as much to try to find ways to connect like that.
I will say though, like with the current social media stuff, like I was really close with my grandparents. Like I spent every summer with them, going back between like my bio dad at my grandparents' house, Christmas breaks. I mean, I'm a child of a divorced family, so like, you know, holidays were kind of split, but you know, I always have always said like I had a very strong relationship with my grandparents, but I've always wondered how much stronger it would have been with modern technology, like
Yeah,
with
you can make it
FaceTiming,
just as great as
with
yeah.
with everything. Because like, you know, like one of my favorite things about with my grandmother was I could not wait to go visit her because she taught me to cook. She taught me to bake. She taught me to cook. I'm literally like a miniature version of her. Like I'm the like love party planning. I really want to learn how to do a lot of these other crafts that I haven't had anyone able to show me because unfortunately my grandmother passed away. Um, gosh, it's been over 10 years now. And so, she passed away when I was in college. And so I just didn't get to learn everything I wanted to learn. And I've always been like, I wondered if we had FaceTime, she could have been teaching me via FaceTime because I lived in North Carolina. She lives in Texas or Tennessee, or when I lived overseas, she was in Tennessee. And so I do think that if you utilize these platforms, you could still have that really strong connection with family members. Um, Obviously both parties have to agree to it, but I mean, I just feel like there is a disconnect where people are so focused on like, instead of spending time as a family, we're on our phones, but that's an easy fix. When your grandparents are visiting, okay, this time no screens.
Mm-hmm.
And go for it. Like anytime they come, the screens are usually put away, like maybe 30 minutes to like watch at it in the morning. A lot of times if we go to dinner, I'll bring it along just because like they get bored super easy. But I mean, they love experiencing all these things with their grandparents. And every time they know their grandparents are coming, they get to go do something super fun with them. Like we either go to a museum or to the zoo or to a park, or I don't know,
Yeah,
all
your
the
kids are
things that
definitely
are out
lucky
there.
too, though, that your in-laws and your parents are relatively close, so they've had the
Yeah,
chance.
right
Yeah,
now. But I mean, like before we were in North Carolina, it was in Texas and it wasn't as close. I mean, we came for Christmas time. Either we would come or they would come to our house. And so I am fortunate right now that my in-laws and my parents are really close. Within 3 to 4 hours away. Um and that was one of the reasons why I was so adamant about coming to Fort Bragg, because I was like, I wanted to be, close enough to, I wanted somewhere on the East Coast. So I wanted to be somewhere close enough to where like we could get in the car and we can drive, or they could get in their car and drive to us, and it wasn't going to be a huge dollar amount to come visit us, and things like that. And my in-laws are retired now, and that's just been great too, because they're just like, we have nothing to do. Can we come visit? And I'm like, absolutely. I got to go on a work trip. Can you come and watch the kids for me? And it's been really great. But that's not, everyone doesn't have that luxury. I went through that period where I didn't have that luxury when we were in Alaska and Texas, and I will never take it for granted. And if you have that relationship, even if you had a rough relationship at the beginning of your relationship with your in-laws or vice versa, I feel like it can be mended. I mean, I feel like I mended my relationship. Me and my mother-in-law did not have a good start at the beginning of our relationship, and I talked to her more than I talked to my mom.
yeah. See, we have the opposite story. We've never ever lived anywhere near our family since we both got out of high school. So it has been a lot. It's really hard. The kids maybe not even always see their grandparents every year.
And I
And
should preference and say that both my parents and Jeremy's parents are military. So um they kind of stayed near military bases. So that
yeah,
was
so
kind of
that does help. But
yeah.
the thing is, we also have this huge age gap with my in-laws, where they're so much older that they're not going out of their way to call or make video calls or anything. We need to talk to them more often, but like it just isn't in them to do that. They aren't the kind of people who make phone calls and sit and talk for hours, and they're just not. And so it is so hard being military and knowing that like now we're so far away, and the kids, they love their grandparents. So when they do get to spend time with them, they've spent a whole summer with them before, and they love doing it. But I wish that we had that stronger connection and had the ability to continue it throughout the year, because they're going to regret it. And it's like, but they have no choice in the matter, because our careers have pushed us to where we live, and they didn't really get an option. So it makes you feel really bad about that connection like isn't as strong. Because I also had a really strong connection with my grandparents. My mom's parents basically lived with us a lot when we were younger. They were in and out all the time. We lived down the street for quite a while. We lived in a trailer park where they lived literally like 2 blocks away. So mom would just send us over to grandma's house. So like, we were always at their house. And then we always went and saw my grandparents in Nebraska every summer and probably at Christmas time every year. So we were there all the time too, and was really close to them. And I don't feel like I don't have our kids have that with my grandparents, which is really, really sad. Even my parents, like, who did they come to visit us? So it's not always us going to them. So my kids will often get to see them twice a year, but twice a year, like I think about like their cousins and stuff who get to see them once a month at least, like it's such a different relationship from that. And yeah, I think it shouldn't fall just on us, because I feel like even since we were young, the blame was like, oh, well, you guys chose to move far away. And it's like, man, but you aren't putting a lot of effort into sending birthday presents or calling, or you never call unless we call you. Like,
it's so funny that you say birthday or Christmas presents and stuff, because like the last couple years, like it's definitely fallen through the crack for at least my parents. Now my parents have been really busy with like opening the business, and my mom this year, my gosh, the amount of presents she sent. Like she literally had to have been like on Amazon. It was like, oh, I like this, and then would walk away and then come back and forget that she put stuff in the cart and then added more into the cart. Cause like
what's funny though? I feel like maybe it's just there's this generation of time, right? Like between their late 40s to like into their 60s, where they don't really acknowledge that they're a grandparent, maybe. Like they know that they have grandkids, but they're still focused on their own life until retirement.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden it clicks like, I'm grandma and I should be doing what my parents did.
Yeah. And my mom, I think this year is the first year where she's kind of my sister moved up there last year. So she's taken a lot of the workload off of my mom, being physically there. So she's had a little bit more downtime, I feel, as well as my mom's still fairly young. I mean, my mom was a teen mom, had me when she was a teenager. So I think she's like, she doesn't even refer to herself as a grandma. Like it's Mia. Like that's her grandma name is Mia.
Yeah. When my mom became a grandma, she denied, like she didn't want any names. She just, it's so funny. I'm like,
but I mean, like I'm 35. I mean, granted, I think our Brittany had the first grandbaby, and she had Remy 9 months before our Devlin. I had Devlin, so they're only 9 months apart. And I think we were 26, 27 when we had our first babies. So, it wasn't like we had babies super early. Like we waited until our mid to late 20s to have our first. I mean, I had both of mine before I was 30. So I had both kids between 27 and 30.
Yeah, but your mom was still young. I think my mom was probably only like 45 when my sister had the first grandkid. So,
oh yeah, like my mom,
and like thinking that I'm 35, like we're 35, to think that like in 10 years I would be a grandma. That it is hard to like acknowledge that.
And I think that's like where I'm at, because like that could be a thing, because I mean Devlin turns 9 next week.
It could be.
It's a very strong possibility. I hope to God that I raise him enough to be smart and safe and all that kind of stuff, to not be.
He'll be 22 in 10 years. Years.
My mind is blown. Like my mind is blown. But like that's just the thing though, is like time, it's time. I mean, not everyone does military life for 20 years. Some people only do it for 4. I would just, biggest suggestion is don't ruin relationships. Like just be honest with them, saying, hey, we can't afford it. Like if I told my dad I can't afford to come home for Christmas, he'd be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna send you money to come home for Christmas. Or, hey, okay, well, why don't we come see you? Do you have room for us to stay? I feel like when we're young spouses, and we've talked about this in another podcast, where it's okay to say no, to go home for the holidays and things like that, because of so many reasons. But, I've always tried to go home when we can. So like Thanksgiving, this past Thanksgiving, I made it, even though we only went home for a day and a half to Tennessee, I made it a like priority that we're going to Thanksgiving in Tennessee this year. And it didn't even work out the way I wanted it to, but it was still just so nice to see everybody's faces that we haven't seen in quite a while. And it was easy for me because it was only a 3.5-hour drive. And that was why I was like, I can make this a priority and I can come stay. But at the same time, like I wouldn't have done that if we were at Fort Bragg, and I had done that for years because it was a 7-hour drive. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to drive 7 hours. for to turn around the next day and drive back. Like that's just too much. It's way too much with
So much
kids.
kids. Yeah. And that's the big thing. We're going back to the States next month. And I just am dreading it. Like my kids are old enough. And I was talking to them today. I was like, I am getting the window seat because I'm tired of them fighting over who gets the window seat and then never even looking out the window. But I'm like, also, I can go a 14-hour flight without going up and go to the restroom. I'm fine because I know that and I don't want to get up. And so last time on the way here, I wanted to sleep. We had done a red eye overnight and flown here. And like, I wanted to sleep, but every time I'd be almost asleep, one of them would be needing to go to the bathroom. And I was like, I'm going to
their butt sit on the
lose
outside.
it. So I was like, nah, but traveling back, and they have to calculate the fact that we do have to travel with our kids. Like it is so much harder to go back and visit family when it's distance than to have them come out here. So
and it's just like I thankfully like my dad, my bio dad and stuff, like they got a new bedroom set, but like the last 3 years I've either had to sleep on a couch or an air mattress for like the time I was there. And I was like, I'm sorry, but that's just it's not comfortable. Like for a one night stay, yes, but like to come more than like 2 nights, that's not comfortable. And so but like I do want my kids to have a better relationship with them. So, I am trying to make the more conscious effort of going to visit more often, or have them come visit us since we're so close. But, there's just so many things. I mean, even if you're just keeping traditions alive in your household that you're like, if you can't go home for the holidays, continue those traditions that you did with your family. We've always done gingerbread houses. In my family, the last, I don't know, my mom started this tradition of doing gingerbread houses when I was like a junior in high school. I don't know why it started then, but like every year we decorate a gingerbread house. And so I continue that tradition with my kids, whether we do a party. This year they got like teeny tiny, like index size ones. Cause I was just like, we're not doing the whole shebang this year, but there's still a little gingerbread house for you guys to decorate.
and those activities could be when you call, like the conversations don't have to be like sitting here staring at each other to a computer talking,
And
because
being
my
like,
kids love their
what are
grandparents
you
and in
doing?
person they'll talk like that forever, right?
Yes.
But
But
as
it's so
soon as that
hard.
camera's on, they're like, I don't know, I got nothing to say. You're like,
Yeah.
dang it, we just called them just for you to talk to them. You wanted to tell them all about this. Now I have to tell them all about it because you want to
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yes.
So do it
Yes.
during making gingerbread houses.
Yeah.
Encourage your mom to buy a gingerbread house. So she's sitting at her table, you're sitting at your table. It's like they're there.
There's so many different ways for you guys like to connect with Zoom, FaceTime, everything like that, like having conversation, making cookies together, showing them off, call after, anytime the kids have had like a like holiday. I mean, my kids haven't participated in holiday concerts. Claire had one a couple years ago, but I didn't even get to go to it because I was out of town. My mother-in-law took her, and so she like sent videos to me like right afterwards and all these other kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's what I would have done for her in return. When I'm like, oh my gosh, like how cute Claire is singing the song. Just sharing those special moments throughout the year to keep them connected will go a really long way. And you can do that for yourself too, even if you don't have kids. I mean, make sure you're sharing your milestone directly to your family and friends, because I feel like if you're just posting it on Facebook, it's not
for
as
anybody.
it's for anybody. Like, oh my gosh, like look how cute we're doing this, or hey, like, I really want to make this recipe. Can you get on and like walk me through how to make
Yeah, because
it?
even if it's not video call, I find that this last year I've been posting a lot less to my Facebook at all, pictures and stuff, because I find that I'm like, I know who likes them all the time anyways, is my family. And I think sending a message with a handful of pictures of the thing that we were doing recently is so much more personal. So like my grandma, I'll send her a whole bunch of pictures and be like, hey, this is what we did today. We went to this castle, and like really describe what we did and tell her about it. And that's so much more personal than her just like scrolling through Facebook and being like, oh, well, look what Sabrina did. She didn't bother to tell me that she was going to do this, but how cool. So I've been trying really hard to just I send to his parents and I send my grandma and my mom very specifically pictures after everything we do, instead of just posting them on Facebook anymore, because I'm like, this makes such a difference in our connection, because then they respond. Where my
Yep.
grandma's not going to comment on my pictures. She's going to maybe push the like button, maybe
Yeah.
go through all of them, push the like button, but she's not going to have a conversation, and then we can continue a conversation. So it's
Yep.
like the biggest difference. And we had gotten to, I think everybody gets into that, like the rut of just sharing on Facebook. And I think it's maybe just recently a lot of people are kind of pulling back from social media a lot more. So having that connection, whether that's a group chat, I don't like the group chats as much. I like each one personally. Like I'm going to send it to you
I do it
specifically.
individually. I mean, we do have, I only have one family group chat, and that's Jeremy's side of the family. And it's just because there's only 6 of us total, so it's a lot smaller. And so that one's okay. But like I'll go from that, or I'll go to my like little chat with just Jeremy's sister and mom. So we kind of go back and forth. But depending on what we're talking about, like if it's just baby kid stuff, I'll go to like Jess and Cindy. Or if it's just family oriented all the way around, I'll use that family chat. But that's the only family chat that I actually participate in.
See, my family's just so disconnected anymore. And I don't know if it's just the way you're raised, or our parents getting divorced after we had all moved out, or just like what it is, but I have a relationship with each of them individually, but there doesn't feel like there's this family unit. So when they have put together a family chat, but I never comment because I'm like, I know the secrets I'm keeping for you, and it's like us all talking together is super weird because they don't tell each other things, and I hear things from other people, and it's like I don't understand how they have these chats, so I never participate. I feel bad, but I'm like, I don't want to sit here and BS with you guys because it's so shallow. It's so shallow because I know you're not telling this person that, you're not telling person that, and
you're not telling the whole truth. Yeah,
I'm like, this is the most shallow conversation ever, and you guys are just having it, and I'm like, I'm not involved.
Well, and then like this also goes for your service member too. Like if your service member is gone, like keep up with your traditions, start new traditions. It's okay. I've seen so many families who are just like, I don't want to do anything for the holiday season because my soldier's not home and I can't go home. And I'm just like, you might not want to, I mean, I guess like my viewpoint is like, you may not want to do it, but your kids, you're also like, if you have kids, that affects them as well. So like, you want to keep things as relatively normal throughout the holiday seasons, or they're going to feel it. They're already feeling the absence of their family member, their parent, or not going home in to see family. And, I did this too. Like at the very beginning, I was like, oh, I don't need to worry about setting up the Christmas tree. Jeremy's gone. I don't need to worry about, doing all the things that we usually do when he's home. And then after a few years, I was like, no, like, I don't need to make myself more depressed through the holiday season, knowing that he's gone. These things bring me joy. I'm going to do these with friends now. I'm going to make, you have your tribe that you make, just bring your tribe in. They're going through the same thing.
That friends thing is the big thing. Cause I remember my first deployment, like Christmas feels like such a long holiday because they start putting it out in stores.
Oh my gosh. It's like a month. Yeah. Because
in the middle of summer. So it's not like you feel like Christmas is like here. It's like Christmas has been here and it's still here and it's never going away. And I still have to do it alone. And it feels so long. And but you should still do the fun things because otherwise it's going to feel longer. Like if you're sitting there doing nothing for the entire month of December, Christmas is never going to get there. It's going to feel so long.
I mean, if you are not capable of going home, whether it's financially or you just don't have a family to go home, because I mean, that is an issue too. There's a lot of people who don't feel like they have a family to go back home to for whatever reason. And, create your family, find your tribe, even if it's just one person to be like, okay, for Christmas dinner, you want to come over for Christmas Eve and watch Christmas movies? We'll order Chinese food and, do Christmas morning together with the kids or whatever that may be, or vice versa. Come over after you unwrap presents and I'll make breakfast. I did that one year. We, I didn't even have kids. I was single, but I was just like, hey, I will make breakfast. If you guys want to come over after Christmas morning, if you guys do presents, and all of us were either single or had teeny tiny babies. For those who didn't go home, because a lot of us didn't go home that year because they came home in they were coming home between their window was mid-December to end of January. That was our window of potentially coming home. So we were all kind of just not going anywhere because we didn't want to be, on the other side of the country when we got the call. And that was at the time where you really didn't know when they were coming home until you got the call. Mm-hmm. You had that vague window. And so I was like, hey, I'll make breakfast. I was centrally located to everyone in that friend group. And I was like, I'll make breakfast. We'll do brunch, come over, and we'll just spend Christmas Day together. And that's what 4 of us did. We, 4 of us and like 2 tiny babies. And it was great. And, it was one of those things where that was just something that we did for Christmas. I mean, my mom lived
I
in
wish I had
town.
done that, because the one Christmas that I was completely alone, I don't say don't be alone on Christmas, but don't spend the entire day alone on Christmas, because it was so depressing. Because I was in Hawaii, we were E2. There was not a chance in the world I was going home. Like, there was no way that we could afford that. Looking back, like, I should have asked people to help pay me, because the reality was I was so sad and alone that Christmas, because I was just in this tiny little apartment and it was just me. And everything's closed on Christmas, so I wasn't working. I didn't have that to like distract me or anything either. And so I highly encourage you. I had friends, but a lot of them had young babies, so they were doing their own Christmases, and I just didn't feel like I should intrude on that kind of thing. So I encourage you, even if it is breakfast or it's just Christmas Eve dinner or something, don't force yourself to be alone on Christmas, because it's very lonely.
Even, I mean, I don't know, like and I think this is just me because I grew up in the military and I've been a military spouse for so long, that if I know that you're alone on the holiday, like, even if you don't tell me, like, I feel like just if you just mention saying, yeah, I'm not going home, like, that puts the ball court open to other people if you're afraid to ask to like participate. Because like, if I knew if there was anybody who was alone during the holiday season, I'd be like, either A, I'm going out of town, you're coming with me, like, because my parents live nearby. Or B, I'm staying home too, so why don't you come over? I have a guest room, or you can have, my daughter doesn't sleep in her own room. You can have her room, and you can join our festivities. Now, I guess, like, that also, everybody's comfort level, but like, I would rather spend my holidays with family, whether that is my blood relative family or my army family. And there's just so many things you could do. Like, yeah. I mean, even if it's just getting out and going to a Christmas market, or a parade or a festival, we're going ice skating. I don't know, I guess it depends on where you live. I mean, if you're overseas and you are not taking advantage of all those German markets or European markets, wherever you are, you're doing something wrong. It's just, there's just so much, like, look in your, I mean, I feel like that's the one perk of holiday, like, at least specifically Christmas time, is there's so many activities out there. There's plays, there's concerts, there's markets, there's, even if you're just window shopping, like at a market, like, I just love to walk around and see all the homemade goods. And even if I can't afford it, I'm picking up cards, because like down the road I'd be like, oh, I really like this thing.
That's my favorite thing. It's funny, because at the German Christmas markets, a lot of them, they only sell things physically, like at these different stalls that they set up, because I'm like, oh, this is super cool, but I cannot afford a $200 whatever right this moment. And someone was like, do you have a card? And they're like, no, we really don't have anything online. Germans are so funny. Like, their websites are so like 20 years ago. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but I mean, like, that just, I just think that's so much fun though. Then it's just like, oh man, okay. I feel like I feel like just in recent 2 years in America, people are like, using like Linktree and things like that to have like, oh yeah, you can find my like stuff listed here, or no, I don't have a page, I have a Facebook page, you can message me in here and you can put your custom order in or whatever. But I definitely feel nowadays with the advancements in social media, it is a lot easier to stay connected than it did in the past.
It's commitment.
But I love,
having to commit to do it.
Even if you want to go and be, I can't even believe I'm saying this, be retro. I don't even think that's the right word. I don't even know how to explain this. It makes me feel really old. Write letters. Like, if you want to make it a little bit more personal, a little bit more different, a little bit more special, write a letter, right? Have your kids send a card to their family and grandparents, to their service member. Write a letter, send a Christmas. I've always wanted to be a Christmas card girly.
I never can make it. Never.
I can never make it.
Which is such an excuse though. So my mom was on the 3 weeks, she was here for 3 or 4 weeks in Europe. then she went to immediate home into Texas for 2 weeks, and she still
Did
got
she
Christmas cards here on time. I'm like, how did you do
have it?
that? I can't even get them
Look,
thought of it.
look, I had every intention of doing Christmas cards this year. I even had family photos scheduled to take photos to send out. And it just didn't, like, we ended up not getting the photos done. It just ended up not happening. I have this like idea of a photo to do that I'm going to post for Christmas, which I just have to get everybody on board to do it, which Jeremy's probably going to give me like the stink eye for, but whatever. But it's one of those things where I've always wanted to do that. And every year I've always been like, and I'm going to write up like a little letter to go with it so everyone knows what we're doing, because like there is a lot of my family that I don't talk to on a regular basis or really at all. And as some of my family politically, we've grown apart in years just because I just can't I can't talk to them without getting upset, especially when they bash military and things like that. I have no room for that in my life. um but I was like, oh, that'll be a great way. Like I can be like, the kids are doing this and I'm doing this and Jeremy did this and these were our successes and this is not successful year type of thing. But it's never that happened 1 year and that was before kids. So
Yeah.
but I mean, like, just writing a letter, like that was one of my favorite things to do when Jeremy was deployed, before all social media. I mean, there was email and stuff, but like I would make sure I would write at least a letter to as a surprise for him to be like, oh, he got mail, he got something to look at that wasn't just in his inbox on his computer that he had to fight to get to because, they had limited access to them. So and that's still even to this day, because like all the deployments that he's had the last like 3 years, he's not been allowed to take any device with him. No computer, no cell phone, nothing like that. So it also just really depends on MOS and job and branch and stuff too, whether or not they get to have those things. So I don't know. I feel like things are so much easier nowadays than they
and
were just 10
it's a
years ago.
commitment time of like making sure that you schedule it and you do the things, but there's unlimited options of things like I was talking about in book clubs. You could do that with your spouse downrange too easily. Send a care package with the book, or get it on Kindle or whatever, and then
that'd be so funny. I was telling Jeremy about Winter Garden and like I was reading it because he was actually watching a documentary about the exact same stuff that was happening in the book. Crazy. And I was just like, this was what my book was about the other day. And I was like bawling my eyes out because like I was explaining the mom part to him. And he was just like looking at me. I was like, we should read a book together. He just gave me this look and I was like, okay, maybe not. Like I could only imagine you reading like
I mean, you have to find the right book, but
but you guys read a lot of books together.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of. I feel like a lot of the books, it's like I read this series, I'm like, oh, he'll like this one because he does like a lot of what I read, and then he reads it like a year later. So it's like we can't really talk about it because by the time he finally gets to it, he wants to talk about it, but I'm like, I don't really remember. Yeah, because he's reading The Magicians now, which is like one of my all-time favorite series. I love The Magicians, but he's like, oh yeah, I'm like, oh, where are you at in the book? And he'll be like telling me like, I don't know what that is anymore because that's been like 2 years since I read those books. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, we kind of don't we enjoyed Iron Flame reading that together, I guess, because we had the chance to like we were both reading it at the same time, so we could discuss it. But yeah, a lot of times he's just trying to read books that I've enjoyed because he doesn't know how to pick books for himself, I don't think, really, and so he reads what I tell him to read. But then it's just so far apart that I'm like, oh, I don't remember that anymore.
Yeah, the only books I've ever seen Jeremy read have only been like military, like
that used to be what Dustin was like too. He finally just decided to start reading some of the books that I told him to read, and he's been doing it. So I don't know.
I know I should be like, you should read a series with me and we can talk about it. And I just want to pick a really smutty book because I just want to see what
Dustin doesn't like those. He forwards through a lot of those scenes. He's like, oh, it's so weird.
No, I don't know. That's just funny, but I mean, like, there's like start a book club. Gosh, I don't know. There's so many
like a hobby. Like pick some random hobby neither of you know how to do.
Video game, like online video games together. Like there's just so much out there nowadays. Like I definitely feel like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago for some of us that, it was a lot harder to build that connection. And I'm one of the worst people when it comes to like friends and stuff. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm like, oh crap, it's been 5 days since I've like checked in with so and so or so and so, and and I'll be like, I'm so bad at this. And I think that's just kind of like my ADHD brain. Like I'm just kind of like, oh, no, Ashley, you haven't talked to this person. Like the other day, I was like, I haven't talked to Courtney in 2 weeks. Like, where I was talking to her like every other day when I was at Bragg. So I was like, I need to call her and check in on her. Like, how are things going? Um, and that, when we all get into our routines and into the pace of everyday life, that can happen. But if you just make sure you take the time to check in,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
I
that's a
mean, I
whole
feel
other
like
group of
military,
people that you don't think about connecting with is your friends. And I've
yeah,
seen it, like, I do feel like no matter what happens, that my military friends
yeah,
will, if we were to get back together, would connect just fine. But they do fall. And it happens every time we move. Like, we'll do
yep.
super good for like 6 months of being really talking. But our everyday life is so distanced from their everyday life that we just kind of like
Well, and
let
we're
it
all at
go and
different,
let it go to the point where you just don't talk anymore. And it's so
yeah,
sad to see it because now we've been gone for a year. I definitely see that with a lot of my friends at Bragg, where it's like, we had this, but it's slowly just kind of like becoming
yeah,
nothing. And sure, we could go back and try to like mend it and start over, but it's not going to last because our lives are so different.
yeah. It's so different. I mean, like I have like my very best friend from like high school. We can go probably a month where we neither of us text each other, and then we're just like, oh shit, now like we're like, sending all these updates and things like that. Um, but like knowing that like as soon as something's wrong, like it's so funny because we don't ever talk to each other on the phone, we only text. So anytime either of us ever actually phone call, it's just like, oh, something's wrong. And like immediately, like we stop what we're doing and we're like, where do I need to grab a shovel? What do I need to do? What's happening? Because you never call me. Um, just because our lives are just so busy. She works a lot of nights and I work days, so she's usually sleeping while I'm awake, and her
Yeah.
child's a lot older than mine, so I'm kind of like really busy with like the everyday like life of like small kids.
Well,
And
physically being with someone around someone more frequently is different than being virtually around
it
people
is
because
because I mean
like
like
I have friends, but I'm like, would I call them if something was going on? Probably not, because they're not here. They can't really help with the situation. It's one of
yeah,
those like, you have to have a distance between you after a certain amount of time because like that's not the person anymore that they were. The commitment
mhm.
levels that you had when you lived near each other because it just isn't. But
Yeah, because it's so much easier just to be like, hey, I'm getting in the car, I'm on my way over,
yeah,
where like, for 4 hours away or however far away you are, across the ocean, states away, like it's not as easy to be like, I'm really all the other person can do is just like, I'm sorry, I'm here for you, but that's not,
I think that's one of the hardest part about military friends is like, and then seeing, I mean, we also, once you move, make new friends, but seeing your old friends making new friends and like
yeah,
having their new person, it's like, dang.
new person or yeah, or just, yeah,
Yeah, like
it can
it's
be,
not that they're replacing you, but they found that person that fills the gap where you were.
yeah.
Yeah, and that
And then
sucks.
I think it also stings a little bit more when you haven't found that person to fill that gap for
Yeah,
yourself yet.
yeah.
Because I can definitely relate to that a little bit because I'm just kind of like, oh, everyone's kind of just going on and having fun and doing all the things, and I'm just kind of like,
It's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
harder when you're the one that moves away. I think that because
Yeah,
we have to start over in a new community where they've had these people that like were kind of in the back in their life, but then it's suddenly like, oh, I have this gap, I need a friend. They can just connect more deeply with the person that they already knew,
yeah,
or we have to like
yeah,
find people.
yeah. But I mean, like, I also feel like we're both at the age too where it's kind of like,
It's fine.
like, like as much as I want to have like a friend or something to go out with, like, I just know that like right now I'm just kind of like it's a lot harder for me to make that friend just because I'm not at a military base, I'm not at a location. I have made a friend with my neighbor that's down the street, and I really like her so far. Um, do we have a lot in common? I don't know. I know that we like books. So that's kind of what, and we have two kids that are roughly the same age. So that's what we've connected on. And that's great. But I know that I know that it's probably not going to be a lifelong friendship, because A, she's not a military spouse. She doesn't know what my life consists of. And like, her husband travels a little bit for work, but like 2 or 3 days. Like when I told her that Jeremy was going to be gone for a month, she's like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, that's actually not
Oh.
that long. So,
Yeah, it
uh,
is our age, but it's also our kids' age. I think for my kids, as they're getting like into the middle school age, it's less about like play dates and getting to know moms that
yeah,
have similar kids. It's like, hey, my son is having a birthday party. Can you drop your kid off? And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as I feel like also like at our age, and we're not even that old, but we're old in terms of military spouses.
We
You know,
are.
most military spouses are between the age of 18 to 26, 27. Is that a good fair range?
Oh, yeah.
And because most military people are getting in for like 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 8, and then they're getting out. They're not staying in past that 10. They're not going to 20. There's a lot smaller like group of spouses in that age.
It dwindles. It always does. Yeah.
It dwindles down. And so, and I feel like a lot of us at that point are just kind of like just over military life. And we're just kind of like trekking through the trenches just to get through it, knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I see a light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm so scared that tunnel is just going to get extended. I'm not scared, but like, I don't know if I want to do this for more than 20 years.
With us, it's like there is no light at the end of the tunnel because I feel like we're just going to be stuck working government until we die.
Yeah.
Because that's just how it is.
I mean, if we didn't have the family business to go into, I mean, I'm already in it, but to go into and like take over from my parents, then going over 20 years wouldn't be like, that would be like, oh yeah, that's absolutely what we're doing. We're going to do that until Jeremy decides that he's no longer wants to be in the military. And I always will support any decision that he wants to make. We had this conversation not that long ago, because he had said something and I was like, look, like I'm going to support your decision no matter what you want to do, but you also need to like at least discuss it with me, because he did something where I was like, this wasn't even something we discussed, or at least including me like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And I was like, you know, granted, like I'm going to be like, yeah, absolutely go do it. Or, you know, he kept on talking about Ranger School and I was like, at that, I was like, are you sure you want to do Ranger School? You're kind of old to go to Ranger School. Like in terms of army years on your body, you are not a sprightly young man. Like, are you going to be able to get through that without like serious injury? And he was like, probably not. But you know, I still want to go, but he's not going to go. I think I don't know. But I mean, he's 36, so he's like,
I feel like
he's like 48 in military body years.
It didn't really dawn. It hasn't really hit me that we're that old until like the other day we were sitting at the PX and we were in Duncan and there was this group of girls behind us all talking about going to the market or whatever, and then I thought they were teenagers and I like looked back and I was like, oh, why are they like not in school right now? They seemed so young. But then I was like listening to their conversation, just like, yeah, well, my little one's in preschool and we're started talking. I'm like looking at them like, what? So I was like, they were all definitely military spouses and I thought they were teenagers. I was just like, oh my God, I'm so old. Like just listening to them talk, I was like, I remember being that, but like, oh.
I definitely feel like I have no problem being friends with people of different ages. Like, you know, I have friends that are a lot older. I have friends that are a lot younger than me, but I will say that it's been a little bit harder for me to connect with the younger spouses because of just the way that they are, not in terms of like the way they are in a bad way, but like just the way they do things that I'm like, you know, very TikTok oriented, Snapchat. I don't know, like
it's gotten to the point where we're old enough. It's another generation. It's a totally different generation. Yeah,
it is a very different generation, and a lot of times it's not even them, it's me. It's just like I feel lost. Like I feel like I'm like a deer caught in the headlights. Like I was like, I don't know how to behave because I'm just so used to doing things my way and the way that I was raised to do it. And so I'm kind of get like, I feel like shell shock sometimes where I'm just like, oh, that's a thing. We do that. We can do that. Can I do that? And it's not,
I learned way too much on TikTok, which makes me really feel old. I'm like, oh, really? That's how that works? Like, oh, that was so easy. Why?
Even just like lingo. Like I like lingo with younger, like I'm just kind of like, even just talking
like millennials, we had some of the dumbest lingo when we were in like young. So,
but I feel like we didn't even have a lot of different lingo that was different. Now I feel like there's just something for every freaking word out there. And it's just kind of like, huh?
yeah,
And like, and I don't know, it makes me feel dumb because I'm just like, I have no fucking clue what you're saying. And that's not a you thing, that's a me thing, because I just don't know it and I have no desire to learn any of the lingo. Like Devin will come home and say something and I'm just like, can't we just say the word like cool instead of lit or whatever? I don't know the lingos and what they're meaning or anything like that. Like I said a word the other day and my stepbrother was just like, whoa, Ashley. And I'm like, is that not the meaning? He goes, yeah, but you didn't use it right. And I'm like, you have to use it in the correct way, like say it in a certain way. Like, what's wrong with you? Um, but yeah, so I feel in terms of connecting with people, I guess it takes energy. It's like a relationship. So like you have to work extra hard at it. Like you're working, like it should be easy, but at times it's not easy.
But you can keep the connection if you want to. And it's just as easy as making them part of your everyday life. Video calls are accessible literally no matter where you are, pretty much. So
yeah, I just talking and doing things and keeping traditions alive and starting new traditions and finding some way to make it special, whether that's reading a book together, writing a note. I don't even know if I want to say this on the podcast, but like Jeremy was like, we should keep our sex life interesting, and he like would like send all of these like there's like all these apps out there where you could like talk about like, what's a fantasy, and you could answer the question, it would send it to the other person. And it was interesting for the first pair, but like we always find out more about each other when we're gone because we open up a little bit more because you're kind of got that
they have
barrier.
board games for that too, though.
Yeah. They got, well, I mean, they've got toys for that distance 11 too, but um but like I love, not love, that's not the right word. I actually get excited when Jeremy's gone for a long period of time because it gives us a chance to take a step back and kind of like reevaluate both of us on each other's sides. And then when we're talking to each other, because we do a lot of texting, like we don't do a lot of phone calls. So we'll text each other throughout the day and things like that. And we're both very emotional readers. So like we don't tend to like to talk about things face to face, like when it's something serious, because like my facial expression, resting bitch face for sure. Jeremy's same thing, except for he just kind of gives you the look like this weird look that like I'm just like, are you looking at me like I'm an idiot? Like, and it's just his face. But it makes me so mad. So like we always have like these super heartfelt like conversations when he's gone, because he realizes what he's missing and like how much I do, and he always is always like, oh, I should tell you this more often. And we always have that conversation about like, this is great that you're saying it now, but you should be saying it when you're home. But as well as like we get to learn new stuff about each other. Like when his last deployment, like we learned so much about each other because we grow. And we've talked about this in other podcasts where we're not the same. I mean, we both met in high school. We are not the same people we were in high school. We're not the same people we were 5 years ago. And so it's always kind of fun to relearn what our likes and dislikes are now that we've grown and things like that. Like, the other day he was asking me like, well, what do you want in your stocking? Like, give me some ideas. And I was like, well, I really want to do bullet journaling. Like Sabrina kind of talked me into it. I really want to do it. So I would like some things to do that. And he's like, I don't know what that is. And he like Googled it and he's like, oh, okay, I think I can come up with something for that. And I'm just kind of like, but like, that's not something that he probably would have known that I wanted to do unless like we sat down and had a conversation about like what are some things that
everyday life, just the same as we are talking about with friends. Everyday life with your spouse gets to be like just so monotonous, and then you don't connect the way you should, because we're the same. When he's gone, it's like, oh, we're talking about things that don't have to do with the kids' school, the house being clean, the chores that need done.
What do you want for dinner? Yeah. And I look forward to those times because then it feels like we're reconnecting and we're relearning each other. And then when he comes home, we get to take all that knowledge that we both learned and implement it the best way that we can. And I will say that like our relationship, even though we've had like two pretty big fights this past year, has been better than it has been in years, just because we've had those opportunities to kind of, you know, I don't like this anymore, or I really think we could try this, or we should do this more often, or, you know, I really want to make sure that we go on a trip this year and things like that. So,
no, you can keep the connection, and distance sucks, but yeah, we were talking like the difference. If you're a younger spouse, just be super happy and grateful for how easy it is to connect with your family and your spouse with the distance nowadays, because we're not, like we said, we're not old. Don't call us old, but like we lived in the
we
time where that,
seasoned. I love how we're called like seasoned. I think that's like the great,
yeah,
that's like the perfect
we
word.
lived
We're
in a time where
seasoned.
it was just not like this. And if we did get to Skype, even with my parents when I lived in Hawaii, it was so choppy that like it's like we're not having a conversation. We're like, now me and Ashley can record podcasts. Like imagine this, like we have full conversations. We've been on here talking on the podcast, let alone beforehand, for like
Yeah, we were
2
just
hours.
talking, catching up on like everyday life and things like that. And so that's great. And like, you know, if you are going home for the holidays or you're visiting, like we've said in other episodes, it's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. That's do set boundaries. Like, hey, I'm coming home for Christmas. This is where I am. If you want to see me, you have to come to me. Don't use all your energy and your resources making sure that you go see everybody. If they want to see you, they'll come see you.
And you can set boundaries with family. Like if you want to have a video call with your spouse who's deployed and not have parents, in-laws, cousins, sisters in that video call on Christmas, feel like you should be able to do that. Like say, hey,
or even be like, hey, I'm gonna go in here and talk to him for a few minutes by myself, and then I'll come out and let everyone say hi.
yeah,
Type of
but
thing.
like
Like,
set that boundary. Like, hey, I definitely still want to have time with my spouse alone on Christmas.
Yeah,
and don't let them be like, oh, he can be on the call with us. Well, we'll be quiet, or set the
well,
boundary.
a set that boundary, but explain to them that like that can just be overstimulating for him, like for your service member. You know, I don't know if you've, I mean, I know if I've been on the receiving end where it's just jumble, I'm just like, I can't, I'm done. Like,
Yeah, and
there's
also,
more
I mean,
than one
there's things
person
that
talking.
our service member tells us personally that he doesn't want the family to know as well. So like if you need to also make sure if you aren't going to go to another room, you're telling your service member that, because if they're not aware that his parents are behind you and you're telling him things that they don't want
Or
his
can
parents to
hear.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like communication on Christmas, and it, yeah.
Like I said, it's a lot easier nowadays to do it. You have to do it. You have to, you know, if you're in that slump, you kind of have to figure a way to get out of that slump, reach out to another service member, because you're not the only one that's going through it alone. Um, if you're going through a deployment, there's at least one other spouse that's going through a deployment with you. And so even if it's just like, hey, do you mind if I text you? Even if you don't want to meet in person, text, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, TikTok. I don't all of there's so many different avenues. And there's so many people online. There's us online. You can, I mean, we're you can reach us on any of the Deployed Love pages, on the Ruck Up Buttercup page. You can join our Hearts Connect group, which is why we created that group, was so that there was a safe space for spouses across the world to connect with other military spouses. You know, there's so many places where you can meet and connect with someone, whether it's a pen pal or finding someone who lives close to you to connect, or, you know, reach out to your, you know, FRG key spouse and see if they have any resources for you if you are just in a slump. And especially if you're by yourself, because being by yourself is a lot different than being by yourself with kids for the holiday seasons. I've done both. My focus is always the kids during the holiday season. So I feel like I don't even get into a slump at Christmas, just because like I'm just so focused on making sure that they have like the best time.
I think holidays pre-kids was way harder. It was just like,
yeah.
even if it wasn't where I was alone, but having to go back and be around family, and then still trying to like text with
And
my spouse and like
or even just explaining, like if you did go home, because I went home quite a bit too, during those time frames, and just explaining to family like, well, where's Jeremy? And be like, oh, well, either he's deployed or he couldn't come because of he's in the field or something. 9 out of 10 times he was deployed. But there's been Thanksgiving holidays where I've gone home and he stayed home because he couldn't leave because he was on like restricted duty, couldn't go further than 50 miles, things like that. And it's hard to explain to non-military families. I feel like I have to
Well, it's
explain
also
to
the
myself
exception of being
my
on your
military.
phone. I feel like Christmas, especially dinners, where
Yeah.
families like, oh, we're gonna be screen free for dinner. It's like, no
No,
way, no way.
no, there were definitely like I remember specifically one Christmas and like Thanksgiving where I was like, if my phone rings,
I'm
I
getting
don't
up.
care who's near it, you answer it. I don't care
Mhm.
what the number says, answer it. Do not let it go to voicemail, answer it, because that was the time though where like if he got that phone call, that was like maybe the only phone call I would get in the entire week. And I remember like even at work, like when I was working, when I was waitressing, like if I was just like, hey guys, I know Jeremy's calling me today because he was like, hey, I'm gonna try calling, because he would send me like an email and be like, hey, I'm gonna try to go get in the call line to like over to the phones and try to call you today. And I'd be like, if you see me running to the back of the thing, please watch my tables because Jeremy's calling me. And it would be like and oh my gosh, I'm so glad that our current like newer military spouses don't necessarily have to deal with this as much as we did, but
Yeah.
that heartbreak that you feel when you've missed a phone call is devastating. Like it would just I would just be so like bummed out for like the rest of the day.
Yeah, because it wasn't
um
like the call of the day. It was like the call of the week that you
Yeah,
got.
I mean,
Yeah.
because sometimes he would get the opportunity to come back and call later on. Sometimes he would be able to call the next day, and then there would be times where it would be like a week or two where I didn't get to hear his voice. I still got an email. I should like preference like there was still that communication, but like to hear your soldier's voice, um, is way different than getting like an email. And so during that time frame where it was very sporadic, it was very, you know only a couple times a month, when
Yeah,
you
it wasn't
missed a
often because
call.
I feel like he'd call when he'd be back on base, but he wasn't always in the
Yeah.
wire, right? Like
No.
he was out on
Yeah.
mission. So
Yeah.
you only got those calls when he was, and you waited for them because even if you did get an email, you had no idea where he was or
You
what they
didn't
were
know.
doing.
Yeah, you didn't know like if they would get called out like as soon as he sent that email, and it would, because then you would be like, oh man, like he was supposed to call me today. He didn't call. And then you'd be like, oh, did something happen? And then you
It
would
was
just
so
go down
much
the
more
stretch.
stressful back then. It was
It
so
was so
bad.
stressful. So I feel like nowadays, like where, most people who are on a planned deployment have their own computers, have potentially a cell phone, have some sort of device that they can just use whenever they want to. Obviously not on mission, but whenever they get back to their, housing, wherever situation that they're in, whether it's a room or a bunk or whatever. I definitely feel it's very different now. Obviously there's still members who are going through these like rapid deployments where they don't have
Oh,
their own
absolutely.
devices and things like that. But and I for anyone who did that, like just think about like that was what we were dealing with for
Every time.
12 to 16 months, because I mean the deployments were 12 to 16 months back then. And yeah. So I definitely am so happy that technology has grown to accommodate and allow better connection with your service member when they're gone. So don't get mad at any seasoned spouse when they're like, oh, but back in the day, this is how it was, just because like I don't know, I kind of get a little irritated when I hear spouses going like, oh, I haven't heard from him in 12 hours, but I talked to
Like,
him like 3 times yesterday. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like I get it. Like I get that that's a lot. Um, that you're so used to seeing him every single day. And again, it's different MOSs. Always have to remind myself that different MOSs have different
hours and expectations.
hours and expectations. Like, like my husband's 11 Bravo. He's, usually out there in the mud and grunting around and things like that. So like he's out on mission and he's not going to have his devices and stuff with him all the time. And he is gone. Like even when he's home, he's working late hours. He's constantly in the field. He's jumping out of airplanes.
I like your description. That was hilarious. Sorry, I just caught on
Running
the
around.
he's in the mud grunting around. What does that sound like to you?
This was, I mean, literally crawl around the muds, pew-pewing at each other all day long. Like, it's just, like, that's all they do, but it's all the time. And there's, he could be gone from 4 a.m. and back at 9 p.m. He's in the field constantly, but there are other MOSs where their jobs are 9 to 4, 9 to 3. Their husbands are home super early. And that's great for you. I'm so happy. But like, just remember that that's not the case for everyone that you're talking to, especially if you're using a platform like Facebook, that it's okay to complain, but also kind of be respectful of other people, or be respectful of the feedback you get, being like, oh, well, you should be lucky because your husband, your spouse is home by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'm lucky to have my husband home before 8 every single night. So it's one of those things where don't get upset when you get feedback like that, because you're probably going to get feedback, especially if you post in a public forum. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like Facebook. So
you
all should know that.
Enjoy all year round. I mean, just make sure you do connect with people that are far away from you, because it's a lot harder to make the relationship back, like to regain it, than to just continuously keep the connection. And I don't know, find a way, whether that's scheduling things, planning things out, making like a book club or a crafting club. I mean, I would be super grateful to have like a video call with my grandma every week where we were quilting together or something, like find the interests that you have in common and make it happen while you can, because you never know. I mean, life is just so short. I think that's what I'm coming down to. Like, the reason we're going home is not good reasons, and it's sad because life is so short. So like, keep those connections, be close to people that you can from afar, because life is so easy to do anymore. It's just so easy.
It is so easy. And we say this all the time too: have grace, give yourself grace, give your family grace, give your soldier grace, have room for flexibility. It's the Army, military. We all know that it's never going to go to according to plan. So, do the very best you can to get through the holidays, whether it's a simple holiday like Valentine's Day, your anniversary, birthdays. I mean, those are all important too, and those are all can be lonely days. So find ways to make them special for you guys, whether it's a date night via Facebook, whether he's deployed or not, or just find the way. We're all different. What would work for me may not work for Sabrina. What works for Sabrina may not work for you guys. So there's so many resources out there that could help you guys stay connected, way more than there were just even 5 years ago.
Yeah. So well, thank you guys for joining us. Happy end of the 3rd season.
I can't believe we're at the end of that season.
We're going to be super excited to the next one, because we're going to start a new season and we're going to be talking about goals and our 2024. So I just think 2024 is just a few days away when we're recording this, let alone when you guys are hearing it. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's 2024 when you guys are hearing this. So
oh gosh, that's crazy.
Have a good new year.
Yes. I can't believe we're already going into our 4th season. This has been so much fun. Just so you know.
And we've met some of the coolest people.
Yeah. And we've learned a lot. I feel like we've learned a lot about ourselves, but also
I feel like it's like an every other week therapy session, whether we're just like venting to each other, or we have guests on. We've had some like counselors on who are like literally getting therapy.
Well, and I love that we get to do this and connect this way. I mean, because like this whole time, like we've been talking about like our friendship and connecting. Like you're overseas and we don't get to talk to each other as much as we used to when you were back at Bragg. But this is like at least something I know I get to talk to you and chat about. And like we were just saying, I think we talked for like 40 minutes before we actually hit the record.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys for making it possible, making the future possible too. We already have things scheduled and planned for already half of next year. So we aren't going anywhere. We'll be back in the new year with some new episodes. So we look forward to spending the new year with you guys. So like we like to say, Ruck Up Buttercup.